be calling the May 19th select board meeting to order, but before we go into the select board meeting, we will be doing an NRTA advisory board meeting. But before we get started with both of these meetings, I'm going to start with the remote script. We are using Zoom webinar for our meetings, which allows for the public to participate in the meeting as an attendee. Attendees must register to participate. The registration link is unique to the meeting. The registration link can be found in the description of the Nantucket Government TV YouTube live feed for the meeting. People registering to be an attendee must use their names, otherwise they will not be allowed to participate in the discussion. Attendees will join in listening mode. They can click the raise the hand button if they wish to speak. The chair will call on those who have raised their hands in the order in which they were raised. As a preliminary matter, I'm Dawn Holgate, Chair of the Nantucket Select Board and the NRTA Advisory Board. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. First, Select Board members in the order in which I see you. Jason Bridges.
Here.
Melissa Murphy. Christy Ferrantella.
Here.
And Matt Fee will not be able to join us tonight. Town staff members, Libby Gibson.
Present.
Brian Turbett.
Present.
Erica Mooney.
Here.
Tucker Holland.
Present.
Amy Baxter.
Here.
Stephen Murphy.
Here.
Roberto Santamaria.
Here.
Robert McNeil.
Here.
Jericho Millie.
In attendance.
David Gray. Oh, I see David's just connecting. David, can you hear me? I think maybe you're out in the field. And Paul Holt is here for the select board meeting.
And just so you know, Paul is here for the new business item.
Okay, great. And Paul O'Leary is here for the NRTA meeting with us. This open meeting of the NRTA Advisory Board and the Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. And as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded, so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment as previously noted through the Zoom webinar functions. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to share the screen of your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. The chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda after they conclude their remarks. People can raise their hands for questions or comments. Please remember to mute your phone or your computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. If members wish to engage in conversation with other members or attendees, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. And every vote this evening will be taken by roll call. With that, we'll first turn to the NRTA Advisory Board. I don't believe there's any changes to the agenda. Are there any opening public comments? Seeing none, we'll move to approval of minutes of May 5th.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor by roll call: Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy, Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Dawn Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously. And then we have approval of the FY21 revenue anticipation note. Paula, do you have any comments on this?
Yes, it's the FY22 revenue anticipation note. I apologize. No, that's my fault. I apologize for that. Agenda was wrong, memo was right. So we're looking to borrow 1.395 million to cover FY22 operations. We worked with bond counsel and financial advisor to conduct the purchase of this sale. We did get 5 bids, which is a lot. We don't usually get that many, but I would recommend the board vote to approve the RAN with the Cape Cod 5 at a net cost, interest cost of 0.3800%. The due date on this note will be May 28th, 2023. And then just authorize the advisory board chair and NRTA administrator to sign appropriate documents.
Anyone have any questions or motions?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy.
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously. Is there any other business?
Dawn, if you don't mind, I'd just like to remind the board and the public that the 2 Fairgrounds Road park and ride lot will be available for commuter parking, and the commuter bus service will be starting on May 28th. So we should be all good to go with that. I know the NRTA is as far as the service goes.
That's great news, Paula. Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn the NRTA advisory?
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second? All those in favor by roll call, Jason Bridges.
Aye.
Melissa Murphy. Christy Ferrantella. Don Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously. Now turning to the May 19th Select Board meeting agenda, we do have a couple of changes. We will be continuing under the town manager's report, the preseason beach update. This was something Matt really wanted to be present for, so we'll extend that till next week. And we do have a new business item. It's a noise bylaw waiver for 11 India Street, which we'll go over when we get to that point. And I do have one additional announcement to add. So with that, obviously the select board meeting, we know it's being recorded. And I wanted to mention that there was discussion at the pre-town meeting forum last night and previously amongst some FinCom members and myself and the town manager and the town moderator to potentially move up some articles at this year's town meeting. And the idea was to get all of the financial articles out of the way first, which are 1 through 23, and then to potentially discuss sort of the hot topic articles that will be very interesting to the majority of people, which would be the housing articles, 24, 38, and 97, and then Article 90, which was the short-term rental proposal. So we just wanted to put that out there. Libby, I don't know if you have anything to add to that and if you want to continue with the rest of the announcements.
Sure. One tiny little change. It's articles 1 through 24 that are the town financial articles. But thank you for mentioning the potential taking out of order thing. That the FinCom, I think, Brian can maybe confirm, has this on its agenda for Monday, just before their public informational session, which I'll mention in a second. And okay, so that was that. This meeting is being video and audio recorded as mentioned. The 2021 committee, board, and commission vacancies are out and ready for people to apply. The deadline for submitting applications for committee appointments, committee openings that will be reviewed on June 2nd. Sorry, I'm not even saying this right. I'm just going to read it. I try not to read it. I try to paraphrase so it's not so boring, but I'm going to have to read this. The deadline for submitting applications for committee openings that will be reviewed on June 2nd to the town administration office is May 21st. doesn't quite sound right, but Erica, you can maybe correct me if there's a word missing there. And there's a list of those committees all on the website as to which ones are due by that date for the board's review. There's a second round that are due on May 28th for the board's June 9th meeting. And again, all of these are online. We really encourage people who maybe haven't thought about applying before to really think about applying for these committees. There are quite a number of them. The Finance Committee, as I just mentioned, is having an informational session regarding its motions on warrant articles for the June 5th, 2021 annual town meeting. This coming Monday, the 24th at 5 p.m. There's a link online if people would like to register as attendees. And the town meeting, as I just said, it will start on Saturday, June 5th at 9 a.m. at the Bacchus Playing Field. It will be an outdoor town meeting. We will be under tents. We had a general information session yesterday about this. We had maybe 30 or 40 attendees, and we reviewed with them what to expect. And there's information online as well as to what to expect. And we're trying to get to a lot of outreach about this. And lastly, I think that the sewer director is, hopefully his connection is better now, going to give us a brief update on the Surfside Road area sewer project. David?
Hi, Libby. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thanks.
Good evening, everyone. The project's moving along nicely. We happen to be in the deepest point of the excavation right now. We are at the crest of the hill in front of 45 Surfside, just before you get to the intersection. We're at about 19 feet right now. Moving along. We're going to be completing the rest of this week and most of next week to get to the intersection at Bartlett Road. And then we will be going back over towards where the pump station is to run water into the pump station site and to make the run of the force main over to the existing force main. All in all, schedule's going okay. We've had a nice, very dry spell. We've been trying to keep everything wetted down enough during the day to keep some of the dust down. It's been kind of tricky with the amount of traffic, but all in all, we're doing okay. We're trying to get off the road by 2 o'clock. Every now and then we might end up running into a small issue with a piece of infrastructure, but other than that, it's going very well. It's moving along.
Thanks very much, David, and thanks for keeping us informed.
Thanks, David.
You're welcome, everybody.
Next up, we have our COVID-19 weekly update, and it has been quite a week of announcements. Are there any public comments to open? Not seeing any hands. I'll turn it over to, am I turning it over to you first, Roberto?
Yep, it looks like Jericho just dropped off.
No, he's on.
Hello.
Hi, Jericho.
He's on the scene.
Go ahead.
David has set a precedent with being on the scene.
I'm stealing David's shtick, actually. So, yeah, I'm currently reporting from the Saltmarsh Senior Center. We're in the midst of our first walk-in drive-in clinic. We'll be holding these every Wednesday for at least a month or longer if demand continues. It's part of one of 3 of our current outreach initiatives to try and get vaccines to the people who haven't gotten them yet. And we're going to be doing this. We're continuing our worker vaccination program. If you're interested in getting any of your employees vaccinated, please email me at well, you'll be able to see it on the website. And then we will also be starting up some outreach and education activities to address vaccine hesitancy. Those are going to be weekend activities. And so we should be able to cover anyone who needs a vaccine who has not gotten one yet.
All right. Thank you, Jericho.
Thank you.
And we'll be continuing these vaccine clinics Wednesday afternoons. I would say evening, but we're in the summer now, so afternoons because the sun's nice and out until demand continues. We will be holding a clinic for the schools, at the schools for the school children between the ages of 12 and 18 at the school next week on next Wednesday. I believe a survey was sent out by Dr. Hallett If you want your child vaccinated, please respond to that survey that Dr. Hallett sent out and have a consent form available. We will also have them available day of, but please have your consent form printed out and ready so that we can move the line right along. So I'm going to go quick through a few numbers and then we'll get into the governor's bombshells from Monday. So far we have given at least one dose, including J&J, of vaccines to 9,129 people. Of those, over 7,000 of them are now considered fully vaccinated. So we're just a few days away from having 50% of the year-round community by numbers vaccinated. So about 10,000 or so. A few numbers that are really important to connect here is, since we started collecting information and since this whole thing started in March of 2020, we've had 1,558 total cases so far. Of those, we also had, that is of 32,525 tests. Of those positive cases, we had 5 deaths. That is 0.32% mortality rate. In comparison to the United States mortality rate, aggregate mortality rate of 1.78%, or more than 5.5 times more than what we have here. In the United States, we have had over 587,000 deaths due to COVID-19 out of 33 million positive cases. It is important for all of us to realize that over the last 16 months, Nantucket has been phenomenal. What we have seen here has been nothing short of extraordinary. And I want to thank everyone on this island, everyone who's worked with us, and you as the board who has been there supporting us this whole way. With the end, in quotes, the end in sight on June 15th, I want us to all take the time to reflect over everything that we have done, the toll it has cost a lot of us, the toll it has cost this country, but also we need to realize that it's not over. We may be declaring the state of emergency complete, but our fight against COVID continues. And we all need to continue to make sure that we are paying attention to ourselves, to our health, and that includes mental health. That there's going to be a lot of information coming out over the next few years as to how this has also affected mental health. And it's not over here, and we have only vaccinated less than 25% of the world. The rest of the world is still in the throes of COVID-19. And we will be hearing about large outbreaks and large clusters of cases in the world, especially in places like India, Eastern Bloc countries, certain areas of the Middle East, for at least 2 more years. And we are lucky to live in a country that was able to have such a strong public health infrastructure that we were able to vaccinate, in Massachusetts alone, more than 3 million people in less than 6 months. So we all just should take a moment to reflect these next 2 weeks as we wind down from the state of emergency. And with that, Monday, what was that? The 17th, I believe. Yes, Monday the 17th, Governor Baker declared that he is accelerating the reopening phases. So what was originally set for the next phase starting on May 29th is actually going to be the beginning of the final stages of phase 4. So yesterday he opened up the governor opened up mask orders for school sports. So all school sports and athletes now no longer have to wear their masks while out on the field and while playing school sports. And then as we're moving along, starting on May 29th, The gathering orders, the mask orders, and all the other emergency orders really from the governor start getting lifted. And then on June 15th, the state of emergency declaration that started. The reason we're meeting in Zoom, the state of emergency gets lifted on June 15th at 12:01 a.m. So we're looking forward to fully opening, and that means that means bars are opening, that means opening at full capacity. But what it also means is that some retail establishments, some restaurants, private businesses, they're all allowed to set their own rules. So if they continue to ask that people wear masks, please respect their wishes. It is the same concept as no shirt, no shoes, no service. For some people, they will still request masks within their businesses. And we ask that people respect that. And if somebody is willing to wear a mask, if somebody is still wearing a mask outside, that is nothing to be ridiculed about. We still have immunocompromised people. We have people in cancer treatments. We have people who have allergic reactions to vaccines. We have people who are still within their 2 weeks between vaccination status to be fully vaccinated. There are many reasons for people to be wearing masks. Allergies have been found to be much less. Asthma attacks are down across the country, and they're attributing that to mask wearing, even though this has been one of the worst pollen seasons in history. So those are all things that are coming out. So we'll probably see mask wearing from a lot of people consistently in the future. And I hope, and it's our hope, that as people move along and realize the effectiveness that masks have, that we will find that as being part of normal society. And with that, I'll leave it out and let any questions come in.
I'm not seeing any hands, but I just want to say thank you, Roberto, for your comments tonight, and just for everything you've done through this entire thing. Jill, I'll remember when we thought this was going to be 2 weeks. We've just come a very long way. It's very strange for me every time I read this speech, and it's been, well over a year since this all began. And the way everyone in the town jumped in from the beginning and worked tirelessly to try to keep this community on track was really impressive.
Dawn, you should frame that little speech.
I will. Yeah, I'm not. Oh, Melissa, there we go.
Thank you, Dawn, and I echo your sentiments, Roberto. You've been a tremendous leader for our entire community, so thank you for that. And we're going to continue to look to you for guidance, because I think, as you said, this is not going to be over and done with on June 15th. We're still going to be learning to live with COVID. And so I think my question is, and I talked with Libby a little bit about this in some of our one-on-ones, and this is more for board consideration, but you all, I was not on the board yet, you all met and faced this crisis with great attention and very swiftly, and reacted and got information out quickly. But I'm sure there's a lot of lessons learned that we're going to just be acknowledging as these months go on, and as we open our eyes and see what this return to quote unquote normal looks like. And I just encourage us to get together as a group and talk about what those lessons learned are, so that we can seize on the opportunity to be proactive and talk about unfortunately planning for the next crisis, or have some improvements in our roadmap, whatever those may look like. I'm not suggesting that there was anything that was a swing and a miss, but I'm sure all of you know that there are lots of opportunities for improvement along the way. And if there are lessons we can pass that down to other subsequent board members in the future, I think it's imperative that we take the time to do that as a group. So nothing urgent, but I think it's important to do.
That's great, Melissa. I'm wondering if it's something we can comment into the next round of strategic planning sessions when the board really sits down in a more quiet environment and talks about the future of the community. Brooke Moore has her hand up. Brooke?
Yes, thanks. Thanks, Madam Chair. I just wanted to thank everyone on the select board, the Board of Health, our business owners, everyone for really coming together as a community. And I want to express hope that this joint respect for public health in all its forms continues going forward. I think it's critical for our community's future that we look out for one another in the way we've been doing so during this crisis. And the other thing that I really would like to ask the select board, and I realize a lot of it's out of your hands and will be managed at the state level under open meeting law, but the increased access of the public to both observe and participate in public meetings has been one of those, the gifts of a crisis. And I would love for us to figure out as a community how we can advocate for allowing this continued virtual access to public meetings going forward in a proactive way. Thanks.
Thank you, Brooke. I think that's definitely going to be a big topic of conversation for us. Obviously, we had started it before we found out that June 15th was the day, which was a little earlier than we anticipated. But I think that there's a number of things that we all need to reflect on and that we can take away as good things about being in this pandemic and things that we might be able to find creative ways to continue for the community. So we'll definitely be working with the state to find out what's allowed and what kind of technology, and then also what kind of technologies are available to us. And I know that this is a major shift back for everybody very quickly, and we'll definitely try to recognize that. Jason?
Yeah, I have one really positive thing to say and then one concern. The positive is similar to what you guys all just said of some of the good things that came out of this. I think the town has worked with the chamber better than they ever have, vice versa. The hospital with committees. I mean, everybody collaborated in different ways and in stronger ways than they ever have before. So as you all have said, looking for that silver lining, I think that's one of them. You know, I think there's some, I've heard some comments that, you know, the chamber and the town should not be working together as much. I completely 100% disagree with that. I think everybody should be working together, especially when it affects the business and the economy and the lives of everyone in the community. So that's one of my big silver linings is how we work together in different ways that we had never done before. My concern is, and Amy might be getting into some of this, I might be jumping the gun a little bit, is when I got the text of Governor Baker's May 29th announcement moving it all up, I yelled out no really loud, just because I knew it doesn't give us enough time to plan and educate. And how are we going to enforce, or do we even need to, or just all those questions. And I know I talked to Libby today that those meetings are happening in the town, but we just got started. So I'm not asking for a report from anyone, but there's lots of questions out there now. And I think each week we'll know, we'll have a little more answers, but I'm just trying to figure out what can the select board do? What authority do we have after June 15th? What can the town do? How do we educate? How do we incentivize, enforce to make sure that we still have a successful summer in the framework of everybody has COVID fatigue and they're going to want to get out and have fun. And we want them to have fun, but also safely. And I'm not sure exactly how we're going to do it. I know we will figure it out. So that's my concern of not enough time to plan. If Governor Baker would have called me, I would have said, give us 4 more weeks, but he didn't call me.
Amy, are you ready?
Yes, definitely. Thank you. I can't believe it's only been 2 days since he made that announcement. It feels longer. It did come as a bit of surprise. So a couple of things that announcement, like the governor said, when he made the announcement, the statement was that there are multiple, probably dozens of orders tied to the end of the state of emergency that need to be reviewed. Specifically in our case that we're looking at are the outdoor dining order, which as we've reviewed was originally approved for local approval for these outdoor spaces would be to the end of the state of emergency plus 60 days. If that were held, that would mean those approvals would be expire on August the 15th. That is currently something, there is a proposal and review with the legislature. So legislature and other municipal agencies need to review some of these orders and decide whether they're going to be canceled or extended. That is certainly one. I would expect it would be extended because the entire state is a seasonal type of operation, really. So pulling it on August 15th would be difficult. So we're waiting a little bit more on that. The additional order that would be tied to that would be the ability for these restaurants that generally are only allowed to serve liquor on the premise have been allowed to sell liquor with to-go orders of food only. That was to expire in February or at the end of the state of emergency. So there are proposals in the legislature as well to extend that. One, for a considerable amount of time. I think they're just asking for the most to see and get through the end of this year. So those are the two things we're awaiting. We had planned on putting out an advisory for the May 29th date next week after meeting with the ABCC. So we have to await some of these different legal rulings to fully understand and to help people understand what's available. And another part of your concern, and I know I've gotten this question as far as any adjustments to the outdoor dining conditions and things of that sort. I can review what your motion was and some of those conditions, but certainly there's a purview of the board to review those to see if there's any amendments as far as time, as far as different things. Certainly occupancy was tied to these outdoor spaces, but the conditions that we set forth in your motion was, and the approval was made on a single season, non-precedent setting basis and may be rescinded or amended by the board at any time. So that was part of the agreement. And if you want, certainly ask me and we can review that, but the rights of the town of Nantucket and select board in reference to these spaces and amendments. So I can certainly review that if you want in more detail.
Questions? Jason?
I just want to clarify, when I meant we, as we don't have enough planning, I meant, I didn't clarify this, businesses are struggling, nonprofits, like, here, our staff had to have big meetings of what are we going to do and what are the expectations of the clients versus what are we going to do? Are we going to stay the course? Are we get, so it's everyone is scrambling right now, not just the town and municipality.
Christy?
Thank you. Thank you, Amy. I had a similar response to Jason when I saw the orders, because the first thing I thought was, is outdoor dining going to end after all of this work that we've done and the grant that went into it? So I'm glad to hear that there's some progress being made at the state level. In terms of opening up to full capacity, how will that look with outdoor dining? Because I know places like the Rose and Crown have a standing capacity. Would that then expand out into the street, or what would that look like this summer?
Right. So based on the conditions that we set prior to this, and I think they should continue, but again, we should wait and see what some of these conditions of the orders turn out to be in the next week. But the condition this whole time has been that their current maximum occupancy as listed on their COI, which is a number for most places that they go by, aside from Millie's and others that might be on a septic number, but that number does not change. It's a basic building occupancy number in order to be fair and equitable across these spaces, because not everyone has access to outdoor space. Is that number remains the same. The outdoor dining expansion program was to allow for seated dining to remain spaced properly. It wasn't to increase occupancy, double occupancy. It was to allow them more space to provide the same number of people service. if that makes sense. We think that's something that should continue, that the outdoor spaces were set up for seated dining only. I'm sure many will still want to have space to allow people to have extra space and not be on top of each other. So we would recommend that continue. And should the board want to review those conditions and make any changes, we certainly can do so once we kind of know what that end game is, if that makes sense to you there.
Any other questions? I think that this is going to be a continued conversation. Are there any other reports, Christy?
Just more of a comment. I just think it's really important to recognize how big this is going to be for our businesses. They've been through a lot over the past year and a half, and the opportunity to kind of go back to what our new normal, or go to our new normal, is going to be big for a lot of these businesses who have been trying to, make ends meet. And this is going to be the first time they might actually be able to make some money this summer. And so I think we have to be patient with them and help them along the way as much as we can.
Thank you. Very nice comment. Does that end our COVID-19
One hand up.
update for tonight? I'm sorry, what?
There's one hand up.
Oh, sorry. Oh, Bill Greeter. Go ahead, Bill.
Hi, Don. Thank you for taking my comment. I'm not sure what the comments do at this point or what, but since we're talking about outside dining or whatever, as I discussed with you even today, Nantucket Conservation Association sent a letter in with concerns about the Millie's application. And since we've yet to see it discussed and approved at this level, at this board, looking to see when that is going to occur, given the fact that they're showing an opening of the 21st of this month, which is coming up here for the Memorial Day weekend. So I don't know if this is the appropriate time to ask the question or at some other time.
Amy?
Yep, I'll respond to that. And I responded to Nantucket folks this week. I'm not sure if that got around to everyone. But first of all, you approved private spaces, those that existed in 2020 to continue in 2021. It's not required to have a separate hearing specifically for Millie's. You can choose to do so, and we forwarded you the response from Millie's addressing every single concern of the community right now. So the board can certainly take that up at a separate agenda item. It's not legally required. We worked with them more than any other restaurant in every department, whether it was the three main issues being the septic, which they just put in a new one per all the codes. And I think they have a final inspection on that before they open. And that is the main occupancy number, which I believe is 124. They did not violate that last year. It was complaints that they violated that. They did not violate terms of their license last year. Certainly there were concerns about trash at the Nantucket Beach area, that folks threw trash onto the ground. Millie's is working with DPW to be checking that area throughout the day, and also providing messaging there for folks to come to Millie's where they have extra receptacles to take care of that. And then the other issue is the ongoing issue of traffic and parking. And honestly, they've made some concessions. Again, you have that letter with everything addressed and are able to make that a separate agenda item at another time if you would like. But aside from canceling the sunset, which causes a lot of those parking problems, they're addressing it as best they can. None of those things alone are a violation of Millie's license. They certainly know that that area is very important to their business and are addressing each of those concerns as best they can. And I think at this point, we're going to have to work with them on that. And they fully understand the conditions. And if there's any violation or issue, it comes before you, and it comes before any sort of suspension or removal of that space immediately. And they are very, very well aware of that, which we have in writing. So hopefully that addresses that situation. And we can certainly, again, forward that letter. I don't know if Mr. Greeter got it. I did respond to folks from Nantucket yesterday with all of that, their plan and letter addressing those issues.
Thank you, Amy. Are there any other questions or comments this evening? Okay, seeing none, I'll move on to public comment for items not COVID-19 related that are not otherwise on our agenda for discussion. Brooke Moore.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On behalf of the Nantucket Affordable Housing Trust, I'd like to announce that next Tuesday evening at 6 p.m., we will be hosting a webinar entitled The True Cost of Nantucket's Housing Crisis. Please join representatives from Fairwinds, Nantucket's Counseling Center, A Safe Place, and the Nantucket Behavioral Health Advisory Group for a discussion of how the stress of housing insecurity is affecting our community, as well as a presentation from Municipal Housing Director Tucker Holland on the ongoing work of the Affordable Housing Trust to address the crisis. We will be sharing links to be able to participate in the webinar or view it on YouTube, live on YouTube, or on Channel 18. And in addition, we will be posting recordings of the entire program with Spanish and Portuguese subtitles a couple days after the event. So anyone will be able to access the programming. And I'd like to leave the community with this quotation from Maya Angelou. "The ache for home lives in all of us, the safe place where we can go as we are and not be questioned." And that's the theme we'll be talking about next Tuesday evening, and I hope the public will join us.
Thank you, Brooke. Bill Greeter.
Hi. It was a continuation. I left my hand up because I wanted to
Oh,
respond.
I'm sorry. I didn't see it until after.
Okay.
But
Well, the point being that I was going to make, that I guess I'll make now, is Nantucket Conservation Association sent a letter from me rather than from our 480 members. I expected, at the very least, a response on the stuff, and this isn't an everyday occurrence. One of the big bones of contention always has been the addition of a tent there. And so the board has continually denied that, and it was allowed under the COVID process. And, it's precedent setting. And so we wanted to talk about those things. And what the idea was to have a discussion beforehand. We weren't trying to stop Millie's. We weren't trying to impede on the business. We were trying to make it responsible to the fact that it's a non-conforming, pre-existing non-conforming business in a highly residential area. So,
Bill, I'm going to continue discussion on putting this on an agenda so that they actually have notice if we're going to keep
that would be greatly appreciated.
discussing the details.
Thank you very much for doing that.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Are there any other non-COVID-19 related public comments that are not otherwise on our agenda for discussion? We do have a new business item this evening. It's a noise bylaw waiver for 11 India Street. I believe Paul Holt is here for this item.
Present.
Yes,
Can you
Paul,
hear me, Don?
I know this was an emergency situation. Did you want to go over it with us?
Yes, we're just asking for a waiver of the bylaw for Thursday evening, the 27th, through till the morning of the 28th. So we could do a cleanup of some spilt fluid out of transformer for National Grid.
Thank you. Does the board have questions on this? Jason?
Sounds like this is an environmental issue and somewhat serious, so I'm fine with it.
And it's of course on an in-town street. Erica?
Yeah, I was just gonna know, so we pushed this forward tonight because the work that's required will also require National Grid to shut power off during the cleanup. And to shut it off during the day is gonna impact restaurants and businesses. And so during the nighttime, not only will have a lesser impact on traffic, but it won't impact those businesses as much.
Okay, Jason, were you making a motion?
Yeah, I'll make that motion to approve.
There a second?
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. And thank you. And I'm sure that the neighbors will be notified.
Yes, National Grid has notified the neighbors, and they'll actually be walking around tomorrow to just verify them.
Very good.
The process.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it.
No, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Approval of minutes, warrants, and pending contracts. Before I go, see if we want to take a motion on the whole thing, are there any changes to the minutes or any questions on, there's quite a list of contracts this evening. Christy?
I just had a question on the contract for the fire department, the paramedic courses. I'm just wondering if we have anything where we request that they stay with the department for a few years after we pay for those courses.
Christy, thank you. I did not have a chance to get back to you about that earlier today, but Chief Murphy and I did correspond about it, and I think he can answer that question.
Good evening. The simple answer is no, we do not. It's not in our labor agreement. But one thing we have been trying to do is in our hiring practices is to hire people who are on island and know the island prior to. So it kind of protects us a little bit from that.
Thank you. I was just curious.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments, or can we take all 4 items as one motion?
Make a motion to approve all 4 items.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. Those carry unanimously. Citizen departmental request, Housing Office request for authorization for chair to sign a request letter for certification of the housing production plan for submittal to Department of Housing and Community Development. Good evening, Tucker Holland.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Board. Yes, we're pleased to be making this request tonight for the authority for the chair to sign the forthcoming request letter for certification to DHCD. Certification is another way of saying safe harbor. And we are on the cusp of being ready to submit that request to DHCD. As the board knows, we have several projects underway, all of which will ultimately qualify toward this certification. So we're simply looking for this authorization to move forward with that at the appropriate time.
Does anyone have any questions? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? All those in favor by roll call, Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously. Thank you, Tucker.
Thank you all.
Next up, we have 2 public hearings. The first public hearing is to consider a utility petition across Hummock 109, pole 109 across Hummock Pond Road for service to 245 Hummock Pond Road. I believe we have someone here for this.
Yes, hi. From National Grid.
Jose Vasquez. Yes, good evening. Oh, can you hear me?
Good evening. How are you? Good evening, members of the board. Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, yep. Does anyone have any questions on this? This is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So I'll go ahead and close that public hearing. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
With conditions?
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor by roll call, Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
John Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously. Next up, we have a utility petition, poll 3 across Sherburne Turnpike for services at 0 Folger Road. This is a public hearing. Jose, are there any comments you wanted to make on this?
No, this is another handhold to serve a new house that's going in. They subdivided, and so we're gonna add a handhold because there's gonna be multiple services. So we just needed a handhold on the corner of the property to be able to feed the new residents.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Does someone want to go to a motion?
Motion to approve with conditions.
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor by roll call, Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously. Thank you so much for being here.
All right, thank you for your time, board. You guys have a great evening.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Town manager's report was the preseason beach update, which has been continued to next week. So we'll move on to select board.
Sure. The only other thing I wanted to just kind of mention is that town offices are all open to the public at this point. We've removed our public access restrictions and people are coming in and out and we welcome them back.
Great. Thank you, Libby. We are going to review and potentially adopt a modified committee appointment process. This was continued from April 14th and then again from May 5th. And I know that we do have some public comments that were put in writing and maybe some people who want to speak. Charles Stott.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'm Charles Stott, co-president of the Nantucket Civic League, along with Peter Morrison. And I'm speaking tonight for the Civic League to address the proposed appointment policy that's now before you in draft form. First, some news. The Civic League recently launched a new citizen engagement initiative. As part of that initiative, we intend to establish a third Civic League signature event, an annual forum called Meet the Committees. This annual forum will debut next spring in time for the 2022 round of committee appointments. I speak tonight for the Civic League, whose executive board voted this afternoon, urge that you not adopt the draft policy before you in its current form. We urge you instead to form a public group that is subject to the open meeting law, includes town staff, existing committee members, and members of the public. It is tasked with considering the points you raised in your August 5, 2020 meeting, plus the further issues raised by existing committee members and members of the public. This newly formed public group should then report back to you with a proposed policy for your consideration and by a set date. Those are our recommendations. Let me explain why the Civic League cares about this issue. The Civic League's new citizen engagement initiative is intended to promote citizen interest and involvement in town government. Nearly all of our Civic League Executive Committee members have served as elected or appointed officials in the town. Your board committed last August to develop a revised, robust, meat on the bones policy for making committee appointments. We understood it to be a policy that truly encouraged, invited committee membership to the broadest possible spectrum of our community members. To that end, we envisioned our new citizen engagement initiative in February. We've taken the lead and are partnering with other community organizations, including We Can and the Inquirer and Mirror. We've engaged NCTV to help us develop and disseminate a series of short videos intended to serve as enduring resources for all would-be citizen participants and aspiring future candidates for office. These videos will feature interviews with current or past members of the town's many committees. The library of short videos will enable viewers to grasp what town committee work involves and appreciate the rewards such service can offer. Also, to understand the mechanics of seeking appointment or campaigning for election, and to anticipate the time commitments and effort that civic participation entails. We're anxiously awaiting your board's new policy so we could include it in our materials. But that policy didn't appear until April. And frankly, it lacks the ardor, spirit, and commitment you each expressed last August. Granted, it's been an extraordinary year, and your select board has been nothing but short of valiant in your commitment to keeping this community safe. We urge you now to consider whether this policy is, in fact, ready for adoption. You have an opportunity to reset this policy so that it carries out your commitments stated last August. In closing, I'm reminded of an old joke. What's the definition of an honorable person? The answer? An honorable person is someone who can play the accordion, but doesn't. We know that 3 votes confers the necessary power and authority to adopt any policy of your choice. That accordion is yours to play. However, we urge you to invite the entire orchestra of our community to chime in and be heard. That can be the path to the enduring citizen engagement. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board.
Thank you. Mary Arrow?
Thank you. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure if I can add much to what Charlie said so eloquently, but I did want to point out a couple of things about the history of this policy development. And as you know, Charlie referred to the August 4th meeting, which I think is crucial. I don't know whether you have listened to the 40-minute discussion that took place. There are no minutes that have been posted to the meeting, but during the meeting, there were a number of issues that were raised by each board member, indicating your enthusiasm for a broad-based policy. As soon as the town council indicated that a public commission would be subject to the open meeting law, however, the select board seemed to withdraw and eventually determined that the policy would be developed by staff and 1 member of the board and town council. It was originally expected that the policy would be forthcoming in the frame of October was mentioned, and it just didn't happen. There were lots of other things going on, of course, so it's understandable that this could be delayed. However, when the policy did appear, there was a further delay, and when it appeared on your board agenda, you didn't even open discussion about it. So I'm happy that you're having the discussion tonight, but I agree with Charlie, and I think it's very important that this policy be much broader than the 3 or 4 pages that are encompassed in the revisions. I understand that the staff has tinkered with the policy as it was originally proposed in early April, but this does not substitute for a robust, open public discussion about what should be done. I also note that one of the things that is really important in the development of policy and the selection of people who are going to serve on these boards is that there be some standards. We have many, many committees. Some of the committees are statutorily required and require specific technical expertise. That all should be known. What's been offered as a guideline is half a page that was approved by the board in 2006, I believe. It's now 2021, and I think it's time to relook at what these standards are and what the board should be considering when it is making these appointments. I think the board should have an understanding of what the requirements of the policy, what the requirements of the work of the committee is, and when the board hires someone, enters into a contract, there's an evaluation that's done. And that evaluation usually has a protocol. There's nothing in the policy as it has been brought forward that even remotely resembles that or identifies those kinds of standards. I think that you have before you the list that we made of the items that you talked about on August 4th, and all of those items which you yourselves brought forward really need to be discussed and examined. And I'm hoping that you will not adopt this policy, but instead go back and allow the formation of a public board to operate and to come up with policies and procedures. You'll have the final say on it, no question about that. But if people don't have the feeling that they are included in these questions, it's an uphill battle to foster the engagement of the citizenry.
Thank you for your comments. Maureen Phillips.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thanks for the opportunity to briefly comment. I first want to underscore Mr. Stott's comments, and having the support of the Civic League is extremely significant, and I hope that you weigh his words very well. They represent a lot of involved and caring people on this island, and everything that was suggested were things that you already did mention, as Mary was saying, at last year's August 5th meeting. And unfortunately, the long delayed proposal, which did not come when it was promised in October and only came in April, did not address any of the issues which were first raised during last year's very difficult process and certainly raised in August. What that means is we didn't really have to be doing this now. It would have been far better to have done this well before the 2021 process, but it wasn't. So we believe the best thing to do is for you to move that the proposal not be adopted, and to follow through on the very specific suggestions made by Mr. Stott and by Mary Warrow, myself, and Judith Wegner in our letter. Thank you very much for allowing me this opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Maureen. Judith Wegner.
Thank you, members of the board. I guess I'm muted now. I hope I'm unmuted.
No, I can hear you, Judith. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having this opportunity for further comments. I have written to you all, so I'm not going to repeat everything I've said, but rather be very brief. First thing I wanted to say is we have to really remember why we're concerned about transparency. In my experience, transparency helps to assure that diverse voices and views are heard, and that it assures legitimacy and integrity in decision making. So it's a very fundamental value for local government and government generally. And I hope that the board really gives thought to that and the significance. Last year, the members of the public really understood the importance of transparency. As you remember, the number of comments that came in, including additional comments on a petition, were so many that I think they rivaled the total that typically is votes that are typically sufficient to elect a member of the select board. So there really was significant public interest, and that I think continues to be the case. If the board is going to proceed and not take into account some of the suggestions that have been raised by the Civic League and others, I think we will need, since the public understands integrity, to consider moving ahead with a possible warrant article next year to put the matter to the public so that they themselves can assure integrity if it's not going to happen otherwise, by having more effective transparency than the current policy offers. Thank you very much.
Those are all of the hands that were raised. I know that Melissa, you helped develop the policy with staff, or Jason, do you want to speak?
Yeah, I'd like to, I talked to Melissa before the meeting. I think we should speak first instead of Melissa leading us, because it might change. But so I want to give my quick opinions. I like what was sent in from Hillary, Maureen Phillips, and Judith, and I like that the town administration took those comments and added language and showed that very clearly. It was very helpful. I think that we can take into account everything that we've read and heard tonight and still disagree, and that's okay. That doesn't mean we're not taking it into account. So I disagree with a little bit in the sense of, I do not think this is an integrity issue. I highly disagree with that. We are elected, and we appoint people. I do think maybe before or after we make an appointment, we could do a better job, select board, of saying why we voted for someone. I think if we get into why I didn't vote for somebody, or why I don't think somebody should be voted, or we let the public come in and say, Barbara over here shouldn't be appointed to this because of XYZ, no one's going to, or very few people are going to apply. And so it's going to be a very small group of people that we all know, and it's not going to be inclusive. So in the wake of trying to increase transparency, we could be decreasing inclusion and decreasing civic engagement. So I'm not saying that we don't need to change anything, or if we adopt this tonight, we don't need to phase in some other things. I think that's probably what I would vote on tonight right now without hearing everybody else. But I'm worried that it's not going to be inclusive, and we're just going to keep it in whoever we want in there. And I'm not trying to keep it my who I'm voting for and why secret. Like I said, I do think we should be a little more vocal about what we're looking for, and be okay with disagreeing with each other at the select board, or, it's a 3-2 vote and why. I think that's good for the public, but I don't think it's an integrity issue. I think what has been changed, it needs to be clear. We did make some mistakes this last year. I was the first to agree with that, but I think we're going too far to allow public come up and it could be getting into bad mouthing somebody that they don't like on a certain position. It might not go there, but I feel that's problematic.
I do have a couple more public hands raised. Joanna Roach. And then before I have people respond, I'd like to have other board members be able to speak.
Thanks, Dawn. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Yes, I actually agree with all that Jason said, and I have been listening and following this. And I think it is part of the job of being a selectman to make these appointments. And if the public doesn't support your choices, they have the opportunity to vote you out when your term ends. But I do think that this is a job of selectmen. And I think the other comment that I would make is that for those listening to this, I've served on the Finance Committee here on Nantucket for 6 years, and then 8 years previously on the Municipal Finance Committee in Lenox. And I think that what has happened here on Nantucket is that over these years, we've entertained many citizens' articles that have attempted to limit what the select board's purview is. And I think that that is dangerous in the sense that we vote for you to represent us, and that's your job. And if we don't like how you're doing your job, we can vote for someone else the next time around. But I don't think it's an integrity issue. I do think that it is a communication and a clarity issue. And I agree with Jason's suggestions that what can be done is an explanation and a discussion and maybe some remarks with regard to who you're appointing. But I think that what happened this last go around that was the result of this conversation was an anomaly and not your practice. So I support the proposed guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. Christy?
Thank you. Just a couple of my thoughts, and Jason touched on it a little bit, and I think what I'm most concerned about in any of the changes is kind of reducing the diversity and inclusion that we're really striving for. And this is something that we've talked about since I first joined the board. Prior to having our DEI statement last year, we really wanted to see a diversity in our boards and commissions. And we've said that in our strategic plan since I joined in 2019. And I think if we move to something where we're kind of having these public comments where I look at when I applied in 2017, I was petrified to go on, be appointed by the select board and go in front of you guys and talk. I mean, I know now I can do that, but at the time, I didn't know anybody on the board and I was putting myself out there, and it can be intimidating. And so I think about, as we're trying to increase the pool of people doing it, I would have been horrified if people stood up and said mean things about me publicly, or the board said, I'm not voting for you because of X. So just thinking of my own personal experience, I wouldn't want to see that be our policy going forward. I also think we've accepted a lot of public input, and the idea of having another public group formed. We've received a lot of emails and comments. We've had a couple of discussions at the select board level. I think that we've done our job, and I'm interested in hearing what Melissa says as to how the committee worked in terms of having the public participation. And so, as Jason said, I think we can adopt something that can be changing, and we can make improvements and go along as we go. But I think that we're hearing a lot of noise around one appointment, and it went wrong, and we fixed it, and we want to fix this policy. But I'm scared we're going to do too much harm because we're so nervous of one appointment last year.
Thank you, Christy. I'd like to make a few comments. First, I applaud the Civic League for starting a new forum to talk about appointments. I think that that's really fantastic and hopefully will promote engagement. And I very, very much welcome that. I also welcome continued input from all citizens about how we can improve things. I'm a little bit puzzled as to why we wouldn't adopt some of these clarifications tonight. Because there was a lot of concern about adhering to dates and making sure that all of the names and applications were completely out there to the public. And I think that all of that was very nicely addressed in this policy and even further revised since the last time we saw it. That was something that was really important to me. Is I think that people felt somewhat blindsided with not knowing who was applying until too short of a time period. And one of the things that we're hearing concern about is transparency. I think that's the transparency. We have a very clear application form where someone puts out all of their qualifications. We invite the applicants to come and speak. I don't want to say that they absolutely have to, because some people may be incredibly good in a small committee setting, but very nervous to come and speak in front of the select board. Many of us who've run for election and been part of these big meetings for a number of years, have gotten a little bit more comfortable with that stuff, but it can be very daunting to someone new. And we very much want to attract new people to serve on these committees. And we want to have more choices of people. I do agree with Joanna that the select board is elected with this as one of their duties. It's actually one of the harder things to weigh between different people and their different skills and their different way of dealing with other people. I think that the public is always completely able to submit comments to us like they did this past year. And I'm sure they will this year as we go into the next round. I'm very, very taken aback about our integrity being questioned. I don't quite understand that. I don't, and our process, I think, has been extremely open in terms of how we do our votes during the meeting. There's nothing done ahead of time behind closed doors. No, we haven't normally had a back and forth amongst board members. I think that that's something, if board members want to do that, they can. I think that in practice, it will really be that no one's going to be comfortable saying any negative comments, and that they'll all be positive comments or none at all, most likely. And that could be daunting a bit to people if they think that negative comments might be made about them in a large public meeting. But again, I think the ultimate goal from what everyone says is to promote further engagement, to promote an open process. I think that this policy does adjust some things, and there is always room to make further adjustments. But I'm not sure that it makes sense for us to not adopt anything and leave it exactly the way it is, when we did want to make some clarifications. And although that this was a little bit late coming in, this just did not rise to the complete top of the priority list for the people who constituted the subcommittee on it. And this is when we got it. And we did hold it off again because we got a number of letters and wanted to address them. And we wanted Melissa here because she did serve on the subcommittee. So sorry if I went on too long. Melissa, do you want to say anything before I go back to people who've already spoken?
Sure. Thank you, Dawn. I really appreciate you and Jason and Christy weighing in. I really just wanted to hear what your initial thoughts were on the draft policy and some of the comments we've gotten. So this was a staff-led initiative with my participation, and I believe that decision was made at our October meeting. I think that if members of the public had wanted or thought that there should be a larger participation in that, it would have been nice to know that then. I generally interpreted that there was some trust in our ability to work on this. I think a great deal of thanks is owed to Erica Mooney, who researched other town appointment policies and best practices around the Cape and Islands, and modeled a lot of the changes that we saw here and suggestions that she gave to us on those policies, as well as on the feedback we had heard from last August and last October. So I also will echo thanks to the Civic League for their new initiative. Speaking from We Can, it's a wonderful new initiative, and I think using some models that perhaps even We Can had offered, I think this is going to be a great new initiative and will do a lot to increase interest and transparency on the process for people on how appointments work. I certainly have welcomed the input from the Civic League, from Hillary, Judith, Mary Warrow, and Maureen Phillips. Thank you all for your comments. I also think Erica did and staff did a great job of highlighting the comments and concerns and responding to those. I think I have a couple of major concerns with some of the suggestions we've heard tonight. One, you know, and you all said this much better than I will, but I think the greatest fear is any limiting of equity and inclusion and any further challenges to participating in the appointment process from community members. I'll remind people that one of the things we talk about at We Can, and this is I'm not going to cite the statistic specifically perfectly, but typically when a woman goes to apply for a job or an appointment or a new thing, if she doesn't meet the criteria 100%, she's usually not willing to put her name in the ring. And I understand that's a gross generalization, but I think it serves to illustrate that we want to encourage people who perhaps have an interest and a passion, but don't meet quote unquote standards or specific requirements. We don't want to preclude anyone from giving it a shot because we may be losing out on some talent from people who don't have or don't meet rigorous standards or very specific requirements. So it's very intentionally, I believe, left out. We understand as a board what we're looking for, and I think as a community what we're looking for in the makeup. And our responsibility as the board that makes the appointments is to make sure that those boards and commissions are balanced and has the right mix of the requirements and the passion and commitment to community that is necessary to serve. Oh, I can't even read my own notes. I'm also a bit taken aback by the integrity issue. I'm not entirely sure where that comes from. I think it's perhaps in the sentiment that the public is wanting, or some segment of the public is wanting more access to these candidates and the application process. And I think, Christy, your personal anecdote here is really well taken. It is a very vulnerable thing to put our names out there, particularly when you don't see people who represent you or your community on these boards to begin with. So I think we have to be leaders in equity and inclusion and do our best to keep this policy current and meeting the timelines and transparent with the expectations without making it that perhaps an uncomfortable and grilling process for candidates. The application, I think, is thorough. We have the opportunity to ask questions. The public has an opportunity to share their thoughts with us. And my suggestion is that we adopt this policy tonight and benefit from the improvements that are in it for this go around. And we can continue to work on it. I have mixed feelings on whether or not we need a committee to work on this. One thought I had is that we'll likely be reinstating another town government study committee shortly after this one makes the recommendation this year. This would be a perfect policy, excuse me, for them to take a look at for us, as well as the document that we have appointing town board, commission, and committees. So I think we have some other avenues if we feel like we need continued progress, but I do think this policy addresses some of the major concerns that were brought up last year. And I feel very good about this work. And again, I want to give great thanks to Erica and Libby for their help in their research on what other policies around the Cape and Islands look like, and that this is modeled after.
Thank you, Melissa. I'll go back to some public comments now. Mary Warrow, do you have some follow-up comments?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm sorry to say that I think that the point that we have been trying to make was entirely missed by all of you who spoke. We're not interested, and we aren't advocating for mean comments about people who apply. What we're looking for is a commitment on the board and a statement by the board that the policy of the board and the policy of the town is to reach out and to bring in people across the whole spectrum of the population of the town. For example, I think Melissa made a beautiful statement about the desire of the town to have people step up, to not feel intimidated, to feel that they are included. Possibly you might consider a preamble to your policy stating exactly that. That's the kind of thing that we want to see in a policy. A statement saying, this is a town that has a lot of committees. There are a lot of opportunities. We want as many people as possible, as many people who are interested, who are willing to work, to step up and contribute the talents that they have. None of that. No, there isn't a scintilla of that kind of language in this policy. That's what we're looking for. The talent bank. There's no definition to the talent bank. The talent bank is clearly something that needs to be developed, but there's no framework, and there's no statement saying this is how the embryonic plan for the talent bank is going to be. That's the kind of thing that we anticipated was going to be included in this policy. Some of the things that you mentioned in August, and these are comments from the board members themselves. There was a commitment for the DEI director to assist. There really isn't anything in there saying that. There was a statement that the policy was wanted to help people get their foot in the door. There doesn't seem to be any mention of that or any reflection that is what is wanted by the board. The strategy for filling vacancies that occur midterm, that isn't fleshed out. That isn't even addressed. There is no statement and no plan for expanding and diversifying the pool of candidates. There's no statement that is even wanted. Those are the kinds of things that we're talking about. We're not talking about people being judged and vilified in public. What we're talking about is what we thought was the commitment of the board to reach out and bring people in. That's what the Civic League has been trying to do in its work, creating these videos where there are interviews of people who are actually working. So it's a real life matter. Melissa, you yourself said that you wanted to work to demystify the appointment process and encourage civic engagement. I don't see anything in that policy that advances that interest. I don't see where the partnership that you talked about with equity advocates. The Civic League has worked with groups, including equity advocates. There was no reaching out from the town to the Civic League. It was the Civic League's initiative when it observed this meeting in August, and when there was interest expressed by the people at the Inquirer and Mirror to encourage and to broaden the scope of people who were interested. It's just extremely disappointing that your reaction to these statements is so defensive. It's surprising. It's pretty mystifying in itself. There's no discussion about flexibility for people who are concerned about appearing and speaking in public. There's no, it's just very, the term bare bones was used very frequently in the meeting in August. This is a bare bones policy. There's no meat on the bones of this policy. That's what we expected. And I don't think there's going to be any meat on the bones unless there is a public body that is formed that is addressing it and is going through this laundry list that you yourselves dictated. I'm not aware that there was any meeting in October that it was a public meeting of the Board of the Select Board in which this was discussed. I don't believe there are any minutes of that meeting. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'll be happy to look it up and I will stand corrected if there was a meeting. But my recollection is that the statement in the policy said this development, as it was developed, was based on the August 5th meeting. And that's that. So I'm very confused. I don't understand the reluctance of the Select Board to do this. We elected you, as someone said, and we made a judgment about you. And yes, we can vote you out of office if we so choose the next time you're up for election. But we hope that you have I hesitate to use the word integrity because I don't want to appear to be critical, but we hope that you have the courage to respect the people who care about how this happens and who have plenty of experience in knowing how municipal life goes and what needs to be in broad-based policies. And I will be extremely disappointed if there is no public open meeting group that is established to deal with all of the things that you yourselves said repeatedly were important to you in August of 2020. And thanks for listening to.
Thank you. Melissa, then Christy.
Thanks, Dawn. So the preamble of the policy says, I believe very clearly, and I'll just read it for the benefit of people who are watching tonight and maybe don't have it. The basic goal of this policy is to encourage active citizen participation and involvement in local government affairs. Thank you, Erica. By encouraging local residents with expertise, skills, interest, and energy to seek appointment to the town's committees, boards, and commissions, and to expand the town's outreach to its citizens to ensure that we engage as many diverse perspectives as possible to build and encourage awareness, understanding, and appreciation through a lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion. To me, that preamble is the foundation of our goal in this policy to make these efforts more transparent and also show the commitment of this board and town administration to expand just those efforts. The talent bank arguably needs to be developed. And I think we're going to learn a lot when we get it going, and there maybe need to be some revisions to this policy. No, a specific town administration member is not named to run anything because it just says town administration office shall be responsible for the talent bank data and all administrative materials, records, and processes, which is highly appropriate. Should Libby decide that the DEI director, Kamal McCarthy, is involved with that, fantastic. But to me, that's a management choice. And I also think that is something that Kamal is obviously really interested in. It's a passion of his also. And thank you, Mary, for quoting my quote, quoting me on demystifying the process. I actually think that this policy clarifies timelines and process much more efficiently than the last policy did. And I also think that we have to remember that the outreach, the interest is a collective community responsibility. I'm really grateful to see the Civic League stepping up and taking these appointments to boards and commissions as seriously as they do warrant articles and elections. And I think it's really great to have all of this community support and engagement around wanting to increase participation in our boards and committees, but it is not the role, in my opinion, of this board or town administration alone to do that kind of outreach. It's got to be a community collaboration. For our part, what we can do, I believe, is accurately reflected in this policy. I think it clears up a lot of concerns that came out of last year's vote. And I do apologize if I have the timeline wrong too. Mary, this 2020 and 2021 is a little bit of a blur in my mind. I thought after August we had a meeting, but that could have been when Erica and Libby and I finally got to meet, was in early October. So thank you. I actually had a dream about this one, so it's funny. Thank you, Erica, for nodding about that. So those are my comments. Thanks, Dawn.
Thank you, Christy.
Thank you. I was just going to make similar comments that I felt that our goal clearly stated that we wanted to focus on committee appointments through the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so I just wanted to make sure that we all had access to this draft policy, the same version of this draft policy.
Thank you, Christy. And I think a lot of the messaging does come in outreach as well that we put out on a yearly basis. Maureen Phillips.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for allowing me to respond a bit as well. I was surprised to hear most of your comments as well. The comments that the Civic League and that Mary and Judith and I made, we of course want there to be inclusion. There seemed to be a thought that somehow if you had this broader group looking at who could be candidates, and if the public were allowed to ask questions of candidates, that somehow that would be have a chilling effect on inclusivity and diversity. And I personally do not see that. The fact that there is this desire, and we are representing more than just the people who actually wrote these letters, the desire for the public to have a say. Now, there also seems to be a fear, frankly, that if the public is allowed to give their opinions on people or comment, that somehow your discretion and ability to to make your own decisions is somehow impugned or made more difficult. I'm stunned. I don't understand how getting information from the public makes your job more difficult. I also wanted to say something that I sent in my first letter, that you guys you have so much work on your plates. Why would you not want a separate group to take this on rather than just have town staff take what little time they have to put something together months after the deadline? I don't understand that. Why not take advantage of people who want to help? Why not take advantage of people who are currently on commissions or committees or past members who want to help and explain and make and demystify, as Melissa said? We want this to be a collaboration, but if you looking at the policy as you drafted it, there's no collaboration. Why wouldn't you mention outright to have the town diversity coordinator be included. I don't understand why you wouldn't say that specifically. That's not delegating your authority to him or to any of these people who might be on this committee we would like you to agree to establish. You're not delegating your power. You're not delegating your ability to make these committee decisions. Last time I looked, when I was working in corporate America, important decisions, I went and I made sure I had input from lots of people who knew about the thing, who were aware of it, who had concerns about it. Because handing down decisions, with only town administration involved in creating the talent bank, and without allowing the public to be involved in stating comments or asking questions of candidates, I mean, I don't understand what's wrong with that. Now, Dawn made a comment like, well, there's good things in this policy, and I don't dispute that, but I think we all were thinking that, okay, it's too late to institute a new policy for these elections. So let's just go back to the drawing board with, some of the things that are in the proposed policy, like, no late applications and following deadlines. And, there were some things that would definitely you'd want to have in a proposed policy, but leaving pass, if you pass this as proposed, which has this talent bank solely the creature of town administration with no one else involved, I think you're making a huge mistake. You're making more work for people who already have enough work to do, and you are throwing away expertise and knowledge. And I think that would be a big mistake. I also want to address specifically the concern that several of you mentioned, that somehow that this is going to turn, if someone is criticized by a member of the public or by a member of the board, that this is going to involve some kind of, personal attack free for all. Number one, you are controlling the meeting. Number two, we specifically stated in our comments that personal comments about any candidate would not be allowed. We're absolutely, not wanted, not allowed. So that fact is, the fact that you're afraid of something that we said we don't think should be allowed. I'm really having a hard time with this. So if you feel that you have to pass this tonight, I would ask you to pass it without mention of how this talent bank is going to work, because it's such at the heart of what we are looking for. And I really think it's kind of your way or the highway. And I really don't think that's how you should be reacting. I don't think.
Maureen, I don't think that that's how we're approaching it all. I really appreciate your clarification on some of your comments, but I mean, I think that we want to make some improvements before this appointment, but we are totally open to continued discussion on how all these things are going to work. And I know Erica had her hand up, so I really want to go to her because she was a very integral part in making the amendments to this policy. Erica?
I was muted. Thank you. I just wanted to talk about the volunteer talent bank real quick. To say that it's under the sole control of town administration, I think is actually a big stretch. Town administration's role, as proposed, as it always has been, is to collect the applications and to store them and to have them ready if a vacancy occurs or to put forward when somebody, when something opens up. We looked at a couple of different communities that have volunteer talent banks. we asked Florencia to actually do a draft on our website. It's not available to the public yet because it's still a work in progress. But essentially, it's going to be under the board's committee commissions webpage. It would say, like, come serve your community. Town government needs citizens who are willing to give time in the service of their community. You know, asking you to voluntarily serve, blah, blah, blah. And then you would click on a link and it would be the talent bank form, similar to what Dennis has, similar to what Sandwich has. And you fill it out and you give all your qualifications and you note which boards you're interested in. And you can note several. And we are just gatherers of information to then present to you. We're not going to be, I mean, I don't intend to be interviewing these people. It's a data collection to give to you, because pursuant to the town charter, it is up to you to make these appointments. It's not up to anybody else. This is the job of the select board. And I don't know, I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. That's what I kind of wanted to say, that the way the talent bank will function will be somewhat forthcoming and as it's developed and is put together. But I would say that it's the responsibility of the entire community to help bring the talent. Suggest to your friends, hey, maybe you'd be great for this committee, and so on and so forth.
And there would be nothing to preclude anyone from reaching out to community members saying, I think you'd be great at this. Why don't you put in your application to the talent bank so that way you'll be considered?
Christy, did you have a comment? You put your hand down, but.
I did. Just there were some comments about how including a public comment portion or being able to provide feedback, it doesn't seem like that would prevent public participation. And I just think it's really important for us to, again, look at this through a DEI lens and think about what might not be perceived as a barrier to us, may be perceived barriers to others. And so it might sound like it's just a public comment, but that could prevent people from participating. And my number one goal is to have as many people from diverse backgrounds getting involved in town government. When I look at our boards in 5 to 10 years, I want to see our community. I don't want to see a bunch of white people. I'm sorry, but that's how I feel.
Thank you, Christy. I mean, I will also note that I don't think the community has been very shy about putting forth how they feel, and that just maybe in emails is the easier way to get that out to the board members. Melissa?
I see that Joanna Roach's hand is back up, so I'm happy to hold my comment.
Okay, Joanna?
Hi, thank you for letting me talk again. You know, I feel strongly about this for a bunch of different reasons. One, because when I was 30 years old, I had the opportunity to apply to be on the finance committee. And I think that it is super important for us to encourage anyone of any skill and ability with an interest to participate in town government, right? That's what this is about, right? This is entry level, right? We want participation, we want volunteerism, we want passion. And in order to do that, we kind of have to let select board, have the purview of making the decisions around who can participate. And I do agree with some of the comments around communication and discussion about how that happens. But I think that we are unique, right? We all know this. We have this tiny island 30 miles out to sea with a really interesting community, and we want everyone to have an opportunity to participate. And so putting up barriers and having there be lots of rules around who's good enough or who might not be good enough doesn't seem like the way to include everyone. So I support what you guys are doing and this conversation, and I respect everyone's opinion. I just think that all people's views are worth listening to. So thanks.
Thank you, Joanna. And I mean, I just want to note that I'm really glad that we're having this open public discussion tonight. Maureen Phillips, I'll go to you and then back to Melissa.
Thanks again, Dawn. And I guess I'm so worried that I keep hearing is that having the public involved is somehow going to make people afraid that the requirements that might be, discussed or looked for are things that would be so difficult and impossible for anyone to possibly reach that we're not going to get the good, diverse applicants that we're looking for. This is not we want to make sure that what is established as town procedures, make sure that it is as diverse as possible. And, so the more people know about, who is applying and when, and if someone, another thing that we put in our comments, if someone doesn't want to come before the public, they don't have to. And that doesn't mean they're disqualified or what have you. There's a whole bunch of assumptions being made by, frankly, I think almost everybody here so far on the select board and staff that, the worst possible result would come from having, a talent bank, a group such as the Civic League is suggesting. And I just don't see it. I mean, I personally, well, I don't know. I remember when I was applying for the Concom and I went to the select board meeting when things were being discussed. And I stood up and I gave my, talked about my, qualifications. I was stunned that no one asked me a question. I thought it was crazy. I all prepared. I wanted to talk about it, and silence from the select board. And I think that was bizarre, should not be the case. You should be able to ask people, oh, well, you don't have it, what's your experience, or why are you passionate about the environment? I mean, being passionate about the environment would be a wonderful qualification. You don't have to have advanced degrees and technical expertise necessarily, but the Concom is a committee where, certain technical expertise is pretty much needed. But I wouldn't say we couldn't have someone on the Concom who doesn't have a background in environmental stuff. I mean, you look at the person and you have discretion, for heaven's sake. We can't take away your power. I do not understand why this was repeated 6 times. Well, it's the select board's responsibility to do this. Yes, we know that. We want you to do that. We just want you to do it with more help than you have now. And it seems to us that having help is not a bad thing. You guys have had more than enough to do. So I am really, I feel like we're trying to throw you some help, and everyone's very busy batting it back at us. And I really, really do not understand. I do not understand the defensiveness and frankly, the fear. I agree with you, Dawn. I'm really glad this will be available for people to listen to, but that you feel you have to adopt this entire policy as is tonight. We have to rush into it now because it didn't get done in October when it was supposed to be done. I don't think that's good government.
Can I ask you a question? Just what's the resistance to further refining this as we go? I mean, we change policies and improve them all the time. I mean, I think that this addressed a lot of concerns, but I don't think anyone's saying if we were to adopt this tonight that this is the end all be all, that we're not going to continue to take input and continue to adopt best practices and ways that we can do this better.
Let's see.
You're unmuted, Maureen.
I am.
No, we can hear you, Maureen.
Oh, good. Okay. Sorry, I didn't see the unmute thing. Yes, thank you. Well, when I see a document and it's proposed and a group of people are going to vote on it, then, you know, I see that as the policy. I appreciate you saying everything you just did, Dawn. And if there will be a public, you know, undertaking by you all that the, you know, that further and maybe with some dates involved, dates that are met and observed by everybody, that, you know, that what you have, I mean, I would rather that, you know, it just be postponed because it's so late in the game, but, you know, trying to be flexible and my compatriots may be, you know, not with me on this, but trying to be flexible, I think would be really important. So to make it clear in what is passed, that this proposal is a work in progress, that there will be further details about many aspects, including the talent bank, a specific undertaking, and that these, you know, further fleshing out, you know, putting the meat on the bones, you know, that will be addressed by, again, a date certain, and whether that's September 30 or, you know, whatever, but, you know, enough time, give people enough time. And I would so recommend that you, you know, really give strong thought to adopting what the Civic League is suggesting. If you don't feel you can do that tonight, you won't. So, but I personally think if you feel you have to do this tonight, please do it with a clear and public understanding that this is going to be addressed again, and that and addressed by a date certain. Because otherwise, I would be concerned that it would fall between the cracks as it did over this last year. So, and
thank you for answering my question. I'm going to go. Melissa and Christy both had their hands raised, so I'll go to Melissa, then on to Christy.
Thank you, Dawn. I think I may have lost a little bit of what I was thinking, but I guess I'm also feeling a little bit confused by some of the pushback we're getting on this policy. It's hard for me to understand how this is not the asked for improvement on the process, which led to a lot of lack of clarification last June. And so I'm going to say again, I feel that this is a really good first step. I don't know, and I've heard a lot of comments tonight, and I've read all the documents, but really specifically, I'm not clear on the meat that is missing on this bone, other than, you know, some of the process that Erica described to us at the talent bank, and maybe that's just it. I feel like this conversation has gotten, unfortunately, feeling combative in a way, but I think we're all saying the same thing, that we want this process to be transparent and to harness the best talent possible for the good of our community. And so I don't think we're all at cross purposes. I think we're actually rowing in the same direction. I would like to hear some other public feedback from other community members on the improvements that perhaps could come from this. But again, I'll say, I believe that this policy addresses a lot of the very specific concerns from last June. It makes the process and the timeline clearer. It eliminates the possibility for late applications, which I think is really at the heart of many of the more controversial appointments that have happened, at least in the past 5 to 8 years that I've really been paying attention. And it also adds this wonderful benefit of an application being able to be submitted to a talent bank, so that when we have vacancies, we have a list of people who are interested in serving. So I think in its simplest form, this does a good job of meeting those goals, and I'm happy to have a continued conversation if there are opportunities for improvement on it.
Christy?
Thank you. I was just thinking about the talent bank, and I think what everything is that's being proposed, that's exactly what we all want. We're just saying it in different ways. We want everybody to be involved. We're very happy with what the Civic League and the INM and We Can and Nantucket Equity Advocates are doing, because we all want to see more people on boards and commissions. So the idea that it's too much work for town admin, I think it's too much work. Like, it's all of us putting the work in to do it. So I just feel like that's who's going to hold on to the applications, but it's on all of us to make sure that we receive those applications. And so I just wanted to add that it's not too much work to be able to handle this, and I think it needs to be on all of us.
Thank you. Jason?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that for myself, and I can speak maybe for the select board, that we want what the Civic League and the Inky, what they're doing. What a great collaboration. I said this at the beginning tonight, of what's come out of COVID is these type of collaborations. And Civic League always shows great leadership in civic engagement, and they're doing it again. And I think there's going to be a big effect. It's going to take years. As soon as people see someone that looked like them on a board, then they think they can do it. That happens when we're kids. It happens when we're adults. So I think we're all kind of saying the same thing. The talent bank to me is just the infrastructure, kind of how Erica was explaining. We have to go out and do the work. Getting the Council on Human Services to where it was a lot of work by a lot of really inspired people, and had long conversations convincing people that you can do this and you can make an effort, and it's okay, and you can apply, and convincing people to do it. And that will roll on top of itself. So I think we're all saying the same thing. I was just writing down things like we want what the Civic League is doing and Inky, that leadership. We want the talent bank, we as the select board, and go forward with that and develop it. We want the public to give their opinions, and we're not afraid of it. I just think I'm going to make a motion to pass this as is with continuing to have this conversation. Let's see how this goes this next go around in the next 2 months. Let's see our comments and our conversations. We might feel a little better. We might learn a little bit more from it, and then develop the talent bank, and then come back. I don't know if I want to put a date to it, but I do understand what you're saying. If you don't put a date to it, we're looking over there now, and we get distracted. So that's my thoughts. And if you're ready for a motion, I can motion to accept this as, Christy, go ahead.
I was just going to add, if you wanted to make that motion, that I would add that perhaps in July, we set an agenda item to just review how the last appointments went, and to start talking about what we might want to bring to the policy just once we've gotten through the committee appointments for this year.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was thinking, is that let's review after using this policy for this cycle, which is really next month. So I think a July agenda item would be good. You want to make that motion, Jason?
I'll make that motion with the July date of a review discussion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor by roll call: Jason Bridges.
Aye.
Melissa Murphy.
Aye.
Christy Fantella.
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously. Are there any committee? Yes.
I'm sorry, Don, just as a follow-up on the talent bank, I think it would be important for us to know, just get an update from town administration about when that may be able to launch. And I'm seeing some of the comments, the written comments that are in the packet, that perhaps the talent bank would receive applications and we would fill vacancies just straight from the talent bank without a process. And my understanding is that is not the case, that the talent bank really is just a bank of information, but those applicants who would then be encouraged to apply on the timeline, even if it is a mid-cycle appointment. Am I reading that correctly? Do you all agree on?
My take that it would still be a very clear process where it would be advertised and there would be the 2 weeks where the application, there's a deadline, and then 2 weeks where the applications are put forth for people to be able to see who's applying and ask questions or make comments in emails.
So in that structure, then the talent bank would be a way.
It would be a pool of people we could reach out to
say, this appointment is coming up. You've indicated interest. Now is your time to apply. We have a mid-cycle opening that may still be of interest to you.
Yeah, because that could, especially a mid-cycle, could easily slip through the cracks for people noticing when it's advertised. That I think what people were looking for is let's pool as many talented individuals out there as we can that we know we can reach out to.
Okay, so I think that may just, getting some clarification from town administration at a subsequent meeting on those steps, I think would go a long way to alleviating some fears that perhaps those appointments would just go right from the bank to a seat, which is not the intention of this board and certainly not the intention of the talent bank.
And I will say that in the past, there have been vacancies. Someone has just applied and vacancies have been filled without kind of a 2-week kind of process. It's not that it hasn't been public, but this is to make sure that all of those are more publicized. Libby, did you have a comment?
I was just going to comment that it's exactly as Erica described it. It's a data collection, and if there's a mid-year vacancy, we'll take a look at the talent bank, bring the applications to the board, but that doesn't mean we won't keep advertising it as well.
Erica?
Well, and I just wanted to note too, in the policy that you just adopted, I mean, it talks about the procedures for vacancies throughout the years. I mean, there's a specific process there. This is just a place for, for instance, we just had somebody who applied for the Town Government Study Committee. And I said, I'm so sorry, they're right at the end of their work. But once we have the talent bank in place, she can put her name in. So that way, when we re-advertise for the Town Government Study Commission, next time it gets reconstituted, we've already got somebody who's shown interest. It'll still be advertised, but you've got somebody who has already indicated.
Yeah, and I mean, I would envision that there would be a pool of people, and even if they had put their name in for something else, maybe they get a little blast email saying, that committee is filled, but might you have interest in looking at the things needed on some of these other committees?
And one of the things in the talent bank application that Florencia developed, I believe one of the questions actually says, like, you have the drop down of what you're looking for. If that's not available, are there any other committees you're interested in? So it's not just a 1, 2, 3 questionnaire. It's actually very involved.
So maybe we can just continue to put more information out about how that all functions. Melissa?
Thank you. I would just, say when you get that pulled together, Erica, I think it would be really nice to have a demonstration of what that looks like at one of our meetings.
Can you do it right now? Do you want me to do a quick screen share?
Yeah, no, if you have
sure. If you have it, that would be great. I certainly.
We have plenty.
Yeah.
Okay, can you see this?
I can.
So again, this page is not live on the website yet, but it's on. You get to it from the main boards, committees, and commissions page. It talks about the need for citizens to step up, and then you've got this online talent bank form that you click, and again, it just goes through a little preamble. You click start, and then I'm just going to go through the questions real quick. Your name, your email address, what your occupation is, what your education is. Are you seeking full-time or alternate? Here's all the committees that you can check. If you're not appointed to this board or committee, list in order of preference what other board committees you're willing to be considered for. How long have you lived on Nantucket? Are you registered to vote? How did you hear about it? Why are you seeking appointment? What is your experience or knowledge? List any education, experience, professional achievement, previous occupation, skills, or special interests. That you've heard about, that you're interested in, you put it in there. You've read and understand the code of conduct. And this part will probably flesh out more, because one of the things that we want to make clear too is that all applicants must commit to signing our code of conduct. And we are looking into also our harassment policy. They need to do the ethics test, the conflict of interest, open meeting law, anti-discrimination, because we want all committee members to be aware that we have certain policies within the town that need to be taken into consideration. And we'll keep your application on file for 2 years. We could change that. This is just what we came up with right now. But I think it's pretty robust as it stands. I would be happy to email this to the board so you can go through it at a slower pace. And, you know, if you want to add anything to it, that would be great.
Yeah, no, that looks really good. And I mean, once we get that up live, we'll welcome comments from the public on how it could be improved if there are any. And obviously the board can have further discussion on.
Yeah, I mean, it's a work in progress. We've never done this before, and we're doing it through a pandemic. So we're trying to really be inclusive, but also make sure that we're making, you know, we're getting a lot of information about the candidate so that the board can make an informed decision when and if they make appointments.
Thank you. It looks really good. Melissa?
Thank you. Just a quick question. Erica, are a lot of those questions the same? Are they modeled off the application, the general application for boards and commissions?
I think there's actually more questions here, so we may want to update the committee application form.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good questions on what you just showed us right now. So I think if you could send that link and maybe the committee application, it would be good for us to take a look at that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I guess the subsequent question to that would be, if I fill out all of that information and now you've got that, I would still then need to fill out an application. That's not an application to a board or commission. It's an application of interest to the talent bank. So I think that may be a nuance we need to consider, is whether or not that is an actual considered an application, or if we're really just collecting interest, and then we'll ask them to more fully apply subsequently, should they choose to throw their hat in the ring for an appointment.
Okay, we've modeled this questionnaire specifically on sandwiches. And the last page actually does say my application will be kept on file. So I think this data collection it's technically their application. There's a lot of similar questions to the committee application form, but there's also more questions. So I will send the link. I will send our current application, and then we can go from there.
Great, thank you very much.
Maybe there could be a spot where if someone handwrites the application, they could upload it and or a resume. But that's just a thought.
Yeah, I'll talk to Florencia about that and see how we work that out.
My only other last comment, Dawn, is just that I think this is exactly the great kind of tool that we need for our outreach advocates, like the Civic League, equity advocates. That when you're encouraging people to participate, there's a place for them to go and indicate that interest, because it doesn't happen often, but it does happen that appointments come up mid-cycle, and it's harder to try to find and identify that talent than it may be when you're hosting an event and getting people interested. So I think this is a great tool that our community members who are really actively engaged in engagement and outreach can use to support those efforts.
Thanks everyone for their work and input on this. Are there any committee reports? Christy?
Thank you. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund has been moving along with a lot of initiatives, but one that I just wanted to bring attention to, we just approved a loan for a covenant assistance, the formation of a covenant. So we have about, our Housing Nantucket has about 60 qualified families that are looking for covenant properties, and there's only 3 on the market right now. And so they're really trying to encourage people that might have the availability to create a covenant lot. And the Affordable Housing Trust provides these loans up to, actually don't know the amounts, I'm not going to quote that, but there's loans available to help with the cost of creating a covenant lot. And it would help considering the amount of increase in demand that we've had. I also just want to give a kudos to Tucker and his team because we're submitting the letter for safe harbor. We're basically landing this plane perfectly on the runway if it all works out, to not have any gap in safe harbor over the next 2 years. And the NPDC met this week and we updated our Unified Planning Work Program, a federal requirement, but it's out for review for 21 days for the public. So if anybody is interested in reviewing what our plan is to for transportation planning, that's available on the website. Lastly, I know Kamal's been getting situated in his new position, and I got to hear him speak on Rotary Club the last few weeks, and I was just wondering if we could have a board update, before the summer starts to hear how his position's going and some of the initiatives he's working on.
Sounds great. Thanks, Christy. Are there any other committee reports? I do have one. Mary Warrow has her hand up, and I'll take a brief comment before we adjourn.
Well, thank you. I was raising it and lowering it before you took your action, but I guess if you are viewing this adoption and if you're viewing the policy as an interim policy, it does address a number of the issues that were raised by the issue of the late application process and the timeline, and that's to the good. There are, as I said, many other very general issues that are not addressed. What I am not clear on is, I'm not sure I heard the second part of the motion accurately. What specifically is the intent of the board with respect to bringing this back on the agenda in July? That is a firm commitment, I take it, to rediscuss this issue in July. Do I understand that correctly?
My understanding of from what the board was saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, Melissa or Christy or Jason, is to come back in July and see how the appointment process went this year and how people felt about it.
So you're going, I'm sorry, excuse me. So you're going to review the application process after all the applications are made and the new terms begin on July 1st. It is not then to address the remaining issues from your August 5th meeting. Is that correct?
I think that we are completely open to addressing further issues, but I don't know that any of us are quite clear on what issues are not being addressed and how to improve it. So we're certainly open to further public input. I mean, I feel like so much of what was said tonight, as Melissa stated, was that we all seem to be saying a lot of the same things in slightly different ways.
I guess my question is, how is it to be submitted to you? Simply letters from individuals or exactly how?
Mary, I mean, certainly the easiest for us to get to take in is when you put things in writing, but as always, we'll welcome public comment.
All right, well, there has to be an agenda item. It has to be specific as to what's to be addressed. So I'm still not clear as to how you expect this to evolve and to be coherent meeting in July. So I guess that will remain to unfold. But you do, I take it, view this as an interim policy subject to change.
Yes.
That's correct.
I think that we view it as this is addressing a lot of the concerns. Let's see how it goes and how we can further improve it as time goes on. We'll be looking for more public input on once the talent bank is live and people see how that looks and how it functions, aside from what was shown tonight. And
when is it contemplated that the board will take a separate action to approve the formulation of the talent bank? Is that correct, or would that just be issued by the administration?
No, I don't think that we'll take a separate action necessarily unless there's something that needs to be I think that we're town administration will put it together, and if we have concerns with how it's functioning, then we'll tell them.
And how will the public be made aware of it?
Aware of how the talent bank works, Erica?
Once the talent bank is up and running, I propose that we do what we always do. We put a notice in the newspaper. We also can do a news flash. We put information on the website. And I would like to point out too that you could say that almost all of the town's policies are interim because they evolve. They're not regulations that are set in stone. They're not bylaws that you have to go to town meeting for. They're policies, they're guidelines. And, you know, if something's not working, then the board always has the purview to bring that back. But I would urge you to give this policy that you just adopted a chance and look at the July meeting as more of an update to say, okay, this worked really well. This maybe needs to be tweaked, without concrete changes already being thought of.
Thank you, Erica. Mary, that's how I think that we're viewing it, if that helps clarify. Do you have another question?
No, thank you for that enlightenment. I appreciate it.
Okay, stay tuned. We'll continue to discuss this as needed and as public input comes in. Are there any other committee reports or a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Favor by roll call. Melissa Murphy.
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella.
Aye.
Jason Bridges.
Aye.
Holgate, aye. See you all later. Thank you.